when inflation just started hitting us about in the past year, I wanted them. I didn't buy them. My pride would not let me pay nearly $7 for a carton of eggs. I just saw in the store, I said, no way am I going to do this. Well, now about a year later, they're about $5 for 12 lousy eggs, and I did pay $5 for eggs. What is happening here, Dianne Christensen?
Inflation is happening here.
I know you're not here to answer that. You are here as an associate professor and also the family and consumer science agent with Bernalillo County Extension Service to give us some tips, because you've helped develop a webinar on inflation, living well with inflation, and you're not the cause of inflation, but you got some answers. And we're going to start, you talk about building resiliency. We had a program on that. So we're going to skip to, let's get some tips and also tell people how they can find this webinar. But let's start with giving folks something that they may not have realized. And before we even get into the definition of what an inflation is, I want you to tell me about spending leaks and how to stop them.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And you can actually, another way to think about it is give yourself a $500 a month raise if you, without asking your boss, if you just look at your spending leaks. And so that's the power of just stepping back and kind of taking a look at how things add up over time. So, for example,
well, my example was choosing not to buy eggs, a staple in a lot of people's diets, when they were $7 a dozen.
Right.
That was a choice I made. I mean, I did make other choices, saying, you know what, they're not going to get me on this, and I noticed the price is going up and up and up.
Yeah, cereal was one of those for me. I thought, probably I can find a different alternative for breakfast that's less expensive than this enormous amount for this box of cereal that doesn't last that many meals.
So is that considered kind of a leak, spending over amount of money on?
Yeah, that's a tip. I'm just finding other ways when certain things go up really high, finding a substitute, and...
what did you substitute for the cereal?
I substituted eggs at that time. But there's a lot of plant-based things you can do. I mean, there's so many different ways. You just can change what you normally eat.
But that's one of the leaks. Okay, finding an alternative.
A leak, really, though, is probably looking at just kind of stepping back and taking a look at your lifestyle. Like, for example, you might have the habit of running by the coffee store and grabbing a pastry and a coffee on the way to work. Well, probably at this point you're pushing $10, and when you do that 5 days a week, that's $50. That's $200 a month. Okay, so there's 200 of that 500. Not that you have to give it up entirely, but maybe just make coffee at home, eat a more nutritious, by planning, you can eat a more nutritious breakfast. Another place where we find spending leaks is in all the streaming services. I thought, you have, all the music streaming services, you have all the TV streaming services, and they're all like $15, $16. That can add up a lot. And so maybe narrowing that down and choosing, one or two of your top streaming services, or use the free version.
Or use the free version of some of these things.
For the music ones.
We're going to share more leaks, but Mike wants to show us what is inflation.
Sure.
Well, the definition is, and we know kind of what it is because we've been living with it. Inflation is the decline of purchasing power of a given currency, which is our U.S. dollar, over time. As currency loses value, prices rise, and it buys fewer goods and services. This loss of purchasing power impacts the general cost of living for the common public, which ultimately leads to a deceleration of economic growth. And we've been living with it. Actually, someone just explained this to me, and I really, in kind of a layman's terms, which helped me. Well, we have inflation, largely in part that our federal government, our executive office, printed trillions of dollars, just printed them. And how it was explained to me, those trillions of printed money were not backed by any U.S. production of services or goods, just manufactured dollars, not based on anything, just thin air. So when they manufactured it, the value of that dollar went down because there weren't any goods or services supporting that money. It was just manufactured. And so the price of a dollar bill is worth less because there's no production backing it.
Yeah.
And we had that happen. Those received, trillions of dollars, also went out and spent money. So they spent money on goods and services that caused the goods and services to increase in value because there was more money out there, trillions of dollars out there buying goods, but they didn't have any backing of other goods that they made. So those goods and services went up. Supply and demand.
Yes.
So it happened. It happened. It's here. And it's going to perhaps continue. So back to leaks and things, how to look at what we're spending. You said the streaming services, making alternative choices when something is extra high. What other things can we do, Dianne Christensen?
I think taking a look at your existing accounts. For example, we recently changed cell service providers and saved ourselves a lot of money. And so, kind of looking at some of those existing accounts, you can look at maybe who you hold insurance with, comparing rates. I will caution people on the insurance thing. You really don't want to be jumping around too much with insurance companies because you're rebuilding your history. So, for example, with auto insurance, we have an accident-free. We get one accident-free, for example. We have this long history, which helps you if you have a loss. Whereas if every year you're changing insurance companies, you have to build that again with the company.
I talked to an insurance person who said it's good to actually ask your insurance company to reevaluate your own.
Yes.
But I understood that it's good to change every few years because when they want to attract you, they start with a really low rate. They attract you. If it's apples to apples, start with a low rate and then over time it grows. So I have to put that on my list to really check out different insurance because I've had mine for quite a while, but they attract you with low rates, stay with them until they grow up, increase, and then change to someplace else.
And we recently changed internet providers. That was another.
Really?
They're just, or a lot of times you call up and you say, can you give me a better rate to keep me? Well, suddenly, what do you know? They can. It's good to ask those questions.
Okay.
Even your current cell provider, call them up and say, I'm thinking about switching. Can you give me a better deal? And just making some of those calls to see if you can save some money. So they can. There's a lot of areas. If you just think about, we decided we really don't need cable. We have a streaming service and we don't need cable, so we let that go. There's a lot of ways you can just save in those areas.
And there's always antenna TV as well,
Yes,
which we get KCHF TV and antenna. Any other leaks that we haven't thought about that we can deal with?
I think it's each person can kind of look at it, but the key is to look at the cumulative effect and not to deprive yourself. If you love that cup of coffee in the morning, that's fine, but maybe don't do it every day. Do it, twice a week instead of 5 days a week, for example.
How to save more money? That's part of the leaks, but other things, Dianne Christensen, we can do to...
That is a challenge. 43% of families spend more than they make. And so...
Repeat that.
43% of families spend more than they make. And so you think, how are they doing that? And it's most likely with credit cards. And so it's very, credit is essential in our society, but it can be a very slippery slope. So if you're not paying your credit card bill off every month, or at least getting a handle on it every couple months if you have an extra large expenditure or something, but if you're relying on it as income, that really adds up quickly.
It's what the lowest rate is, 17, 18%, or is it 24%?
Yeah, it just depends on the card. But there's a lot that a lot of people are living with a lot of credit card debt because they use it as
because of inflation. They need to buy even the basics. Saving money on the basics like food and clothing. What can we do?
Food and clothing is just. In our society, I think the pandemic, if it didn't catch any other things, we all wore yoga pants for 2 years. It really made me realize, do I need all these clothes? I don't, and really looking at why you buy. A lot of times it's like, oh, I'm feeling sad, I think I'll go shopping. Or getting caught on the shopping network or the internet, or, using purchasing to make ourselves feel better. Well, that's something worth looking at. And do you really need it, or do you want it? Is it essential? Can you rent it instead? Can you make do without? Some of those kinds of things. Just taking a moment to think about your purchases intentionally can help you reduce your spending and lead, hopefully, to more saving.
What about, though, with food? How can we save money on food in these days of inflation?
Just being more creative. I'll tell you, with the price of meat, for example, I thought we are going to be eating more plant-based. And so, it doesn't have to be where you're eating salads every day. There are some just wonderful recipes that are plant-based. So you're eating more healthy. There's a lot of protein sources out there that you can, rice and beans and different things that can meet the protein needs that you have. And you have delicious new foods that you can try. And so when certain commodities get too expensive, you can be creative and find other kinds of things to eat that are more reasonable.
And you mentioned, I'm going to look online to see the more protein-based things. We can find that through your extension on your pages?
We do have a plant-based series that I can make sure we put up on our website, but we did one a few years ago about eating plant-based, because a lot of people aren't familiar with it. So I'll see if I can put that information up on it.
But there's a lot of recipes and things that you do have on your website, and I'm on it now. Well, now I'm on inflation.nmsu.edu. But we can find it right here, the inflation stressors too. What are the stressors?
Well, people are facing more and more stressors that they didn't used to with inflation. For example, going to the grocery store and the gas pump. Those are suddenly stressful because prices are going up so much. And so the idea is just to really tell yourself, I'm not going to be stressed about this. I am going to find a new way to deal with it. So how I chose to do that was through gratitude. So when I'm, looking at the peanut butter that's increased $2 since the last time I bought it, I just stop and I'm thankful for the provider of that peanut butter. I'm thankful for the person who sourced it, because they're probably facing the same things I am, or buying produce. I'm thankful for the farmers that grew this.
Okay.
Just moving through the grocery store, at the pump, not focusing on what you can't control, but really focusing on your own mindset.
Regarding peanut butter, I love a certain brand, but this last time I said I am going to buy the generic brand, which I haven't opened yet. But with the right kind of jelly, it probably doesn't matter. But still, I think the generic brand was half the price. Yeah. The generic was half the price.
We're shopping smarter. I am. We're using coupons. These are not bad things. We're paying more attention to the kinds of things that we're buying. And we're making choices, that do eventually show up to the producers. So
we hope. Well, and part of it, you may not have the answer, Dianne Christensen, but they're saying a lot of these, not the retailers, but the producers are kind of getting away with it. People are willing to spend the $7 on a carton of eggs, and the prices really aren't based on the extra production. That they've learned that people are going to spend all this.
That's interesting. I've wondered that. I don't know if
Yeah,
I have wondered it like you've wondered it. Yeah.
That I have. That's I've heard that producers don't need to be spending that much, but Americans are willing to pay for it, so they keep the prices up. So until we decide to buy the generic or not, prices might stay the same. Meaning going up. And I think they've gone up 8.1%. for the past year. I know rent has gone up like 22%, but I saw on your website inflation has gone up. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, 9.1% since May of 2021, the biggest increase in 40 years. On the average, that is $500 to $700 per month to maintain the same standard of living.
And I feel it, don't you?
Yeah.
I definitely feel it in my life that it's much harder.
And according to your website, I think the biggest price tag that we have is housing. I think it's about 42% of what we spend is on housing, and after that would be food and transportation. So those are the big things that we can look at trying to reduce if possible. Housing is 42%, transportation 18%, not only the cost of your car but vehicle, but the gas. Food and beverage 14%, apparel just 2%, medical care 8%, recreation 5%. So again, housing is a really big cost.
Yeah, it's really gone up.
How do we save money on utilities, insurance, and travel? I know there's some fun tips about travel, but what about utilities and
utilities? It's just being, I think, more aware of some of the energy saving. Again, did I pay attention to keeping the heat down and the lights turned off before? No, but I do now.
Oh, yeah, we did.
And so
my dad used to turn off the lights in every room, and then you wonder, is it taking more electricity to turn it off and turn it on, or keep it off? I don't know what the answer to that is.
I think it's turn it off. I always wondered that too, but I think the answer is it's good to turn off. And so some of those things, the utilities companies have so many energy saving tips. It's just take a look at those and kind of review how can I save some money here. So
this year, with the price of natural gas going up, we all heard that it was at least twice as much to heat our homes. My son bought me this huge, oversized, not a sweatshirt, but it was like a combination sweatshirt and blanket in one with a hook. I wore that all the time to help keep the cost down of the heat, and it was just really nice. But I think I have really bad windows where I'm losing electricity, so redoing if you have the money, and I found out how much that costs.
Yeah, really
it's
expensive.
not cheap. So I got this big cuddly thing to wear instead, which helped actually. Travel, I think you said on your site, a lot of people now with COVID over, they're traveling, doing things with their families that they hadn't, but you have some good tips on your webinar.
Yes.
On travel.
The specialist, Dr. Bryce Jorgensen, he's really inspirational. He does a lot of traveling with his family and does it very inexpensively. And so he presented that particular section, and it was fun. I mean, there's so many things now available that I didn't even know about of how you can save money when you travel. And so that one particularly is really worth watching. It's very encouraging.
Do you have some of the tips?
There's different ways to rent cars now. People actually trade cars, they trade houses. There's great ways to get good deals on flights. I mean, there's just so many good ideas packed into that program. So
also, I think you said there was a website, which I've heard of, regarding the price of gas if you're traveling by car.
Yeah, there's several. One is called Gas Buddy, I think.
Gas Buddy, to find out where the least expensive gas in your community
area is. Yeah. So there's just a lot of technology, little apps and things that if you're not familiar with, watching the webinars will give you some really good tools.
And I think his is, session 4 on the webinar, part 2, creating family fun and traveling for less.
Yeah. So the great thing about this site on NMSU is all of these are recorded, and your viewers can just go on and choose the ones they want to watch. And so they'll have the PowerPoint slides, but also the recording of the program, so they can get all the information.
You keep talking, give us some tips. I'm going to try to find that. See if I can find it. What other points would you like to make? I'm going to see if I can find this.
Let's see, I'm trying to think. I think the section on managing debt, there also is another one on managing your investments during this turbulent time. That one was very well done. And again, Dr. Bryce Jorgensen, he is the specialist, the family management specialist down on campus. He is just super knowledgeable, and so some of these programs can really give viewers a lot of really good help on managing debt and also knowing kind of how to manage their investments during this time.
He's saying so how to start planning a family vacation, of course, include everybody.
Yes.
That wasn't my case in my family. I had the opinion, but I was told my opinion didn't matter. I was the youngest. So maybe that explains a lot. I always knew what I wanted to do for vacation, but I was the youngest and I was told it didn't matter. But in any case, brainstorm ideas, then look for free or inexpensive ideas. That's a good point. You don't have, you could go to a state park on a day when there's free admission, which they often have, correct?
Yeah.
There's a lot of free admissions.
There's some things out there that if you don't care where you go, you can figure out where the cheapest place to go is and go there. You know, so there's so many options now.
Skip the rental car. There is, of course, Uber and Lyft. I've had friends who state that they don't rent a car anymore. They go on a vacation and they know it's cheaper to just take the Lyft or Uber to a destination and back and stay there for a while. I thought that was interesting. Free places to stay. Ooh, how does home exchange work? Share our values. Couch surfing is a global community of 14 million people in more than 200,000 cities who share their life, their world, their journey. Couch surfing connects travelers with a global network of people willing to share in profound and meaningful ways, making travel a truly social experience.
Yeah, it's free. That one is free. So people just open up their homes and people stay with them, as far as I understand. So that's a really fun one.
I thought the rental car was good. Now, booking your flight, they always say Tuesdays and Wednesdays usually are the least expensive days to fly. You can find the best deals, flight deals with Google Flights, it's saying, right? Bringing your own food versus eating out. When people ask me, I live in Santa Fe, where do you like to eat? Where do you like to eat? Well, I eat out of my trunk. They don't like the answer, but bring my own food, my own cooler, especially with inflation now.
Yes.
So he's stating, bring your own food versus eating out.
Or at least some of it. You know, we usually bring some of it. We might eat one time out, like lunch, which is less expensive than dinner. And then we do breakfast and dinner, a lighter dinner at the hotel.
He says, make money while traveling. Do you have the answer to that? I can't find it. Make money while traveling.
I don't remember that. That's interesting. Maybe he's talking about working remotely. That might, I'm trying to remember.
Or what else could it be? Okay, you'll have to go online. Yeah. You have more time, but that's kind of intriguing. You can make money. Well, there's some critiques if you do a critique of a place or a travel writer, but now these influencers, they make money by traveling. If you want to become, of course, use travel points and the travel apps, which I wasn't too familiar with, so that's interesting. It's all online, so I'm telling people it's through the College of Agriculture, Consumer and Environmental Sciences, and I'm on inflation.nmsu.edu, documents and slides, so it's easy to go online to find this webinar. Yes. What else? We've got a couple minutes left. Managing the cost of living. The general cost of living. Any other tips that you can share, Dianne?
You know, I guess maybe we covered this, but not to be afraid to try to find other sources of revenue. I mean, there's just a lot of things that you can do. I can think in my own life. Really, that need really brought about a lot of really good opportunity for me. And so, you know, don't feel like you're constrained. There's a lot of different things that are available now. To sell on Etsy. I mean, there's just so much available now.
What's Etsy?
Etsy's just a small, if you're crafting or really anything, you can just sell directly online, and so people buy a lot on Etsy. If you make little things, woodworking, whatever it is, it's worth checking out. So you can sell online. There's just a lot of different ways that you can bring in some extra revenues. So.
And of course, part of this program, Living Well with Inflation, is your expertise building resiliency to thrive and grow in inflationary times. That's part of this, and we've done a complete program here in Issues and Answers on that. But what tip would you like to share regarding inflation in the last 30 seconds we have?
Don't lose heart. Do not lose heart. See this as an opportunity to grow and become stronger and more resilient, but do not lose heart. Stay encouraged and encourage other people.
Okay, that's true. Because it is adversity that we're looking at, and we got to thrive during this time because it's here to stay. But I think you gave some very valuable tips to look at the insurance, looking to perhaps change that, looking at your streaming feeds, how many do you need when you travel, make sure the days of the week, use apps. There's a lot of consumer things. I mean, there are people who want to give their tips, share their tips on how they save. So there are ways to save, and maybe don't buy that item that's especially high now, and let those producers know that we're not willing to put up with that price, right?
Right.
Try that. And walk, of course. Save your transportation costs by trying to walk if you can. So thank you again, and thanks the New Bernalillo County Extension Services and for Dianne Christensen for coming on our show and sharing these valuable things to help improve our lives. So we appreciate her. Thanks for watching. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Make it a great week with your family. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.